This is Seth Beamer, and you're listening to the Pivot Points Music Cast on faidr. Pivot Points dissects the lives of artists at their most crucial intersections, investigating the trials of this insane career and how they are overcome. These are the stories of the crossroads that, for better or worse, shape us all into the people, friends, and musicians we're meant to be. Today, I'm joined by my guests, Johnny Burroughs and Briana Harris, of what I would regard as Colorado's premier funk band, the Burroughs. We'll get to dive in with these guys shortly, but first I want to share a tune of theirs with all of you. This first song is their most played on Spotify, their 2021 single, Baby Get Down.
Girl, come with me, what you want?
And we're in. How's it going, guys?
Wow.
Yeah.
That intro.
Guys, thanks so much for being on the show.
Oh, man, it's our pleasure. Thank you so much for having us.
And thank you for breakfast again.
Of course.
Oh, breakfast is so good.
Shout out to Snooze for the delicious meal.
It was awesome.
Not sponsored, but they should consider it.
It should be.
Yeah.
I know. We were saying we should have had some microphones set up there.
Yeah, we should have. We could have dissected that Eggs Benedict like we did. Yeah. People need to hear about it.
Guys, we go back.
Yeah, a long way.
We go back but we were saying at breakfast too how we've never really gotten to hang out. So this is super rad.
Yeah, I think it's really cool.
So tell me about your story then. I know that you guys all met in college. You guys all formed there and started playing this funk music out. And that was years ago at this point, right? And you guys have been doing it for a long time. But tell me about the story about how you guys all came to be.
Yeah, for sure. So it's actually our 10-year anniversary this year.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been 10 years, which is crazy. So 10 years ago, right around this time, I had recently moved to Greeley without really any plan, not any plan to play music. I had started doing just some open mics for fun, like not really trying to do anything.
Yeah.
And a trumpet player at UNC, the music school in Greeley, Craig Bassridge, heard me play, and I was just playing music I love. So I love Bill Withers and Stevie Wonder and Otis Redding, like all old soul stuff. So I was just playing music I love. And he heard it and he was like, "Hey man, I've always wanted to start a funk band and a soul group. Like, would you ever want to do that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd always be open to that." He's like, "Cool. If you get a rhythm section together, I'll get horns together and we can start a band." And I was like, "Oh my, like you'll get horns together?" So, he hit up his friends at the music school. I hit up my friends. It was originally my brother, my friend Sean Hagemeister, and then Luke, some of my friends. And we were gonna just play one show. We played one show, and the crowd response was so huge that we ended up getting booked for a bunch more shows. And honestly, like 10 years later, and lots of hard work and lots of fun, like we're here now.
And so, who in that original lineup is still in it today?
Just 2 members now. So just me and Hayden Farr.
Wow.
Mary and Jeremy, our drummer and our trombone player, joined the second show.
Okay.
And then after about a year, maybe a little bit less, a bunch of members left the band, and that's when Bree joined, and Brian joined, and Alec joined at that point too.
Wow.
So we've had a pretty consistent lineup, like throughout a lot of the history of the band. I mean, that core group of people who was there circa like 2014, which is kind of when I came in, has been really consistent. And then a couple of our chairs have had a little bit of cycling in and out. Our newest member of the band is Jack McManaman, who plays on guitar. But he has also like subbed with us and been a friend for years. And then,
oh, cool.
Yeah. And same kind of thing with Spencer Zweifel, who's our keyboard player now, like who's kind of officially been in that role for a couple of years. I mean, has played with us on and off for like 4 years now.
Well, and isn't that how it goes in this scene too?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Like that, just in music and in art in general. I feel like your network is,
especially if you have 9 people.
Yeah.
Like things are gonna rotate. So,
did you always envision it being this big then? This 9-person band? And
I mean, the vision was always to have like a big soul band. So it was 6 at first, 7. It was 7 the first show, and then it became 8 the second show, and then eventually
You wanted
became
to add,
nine.
yeah.
And then I added my other brother on guitar. Originally, I was just like, again, I wasn't trying to do anything serious. So originally, I was just like, I don't know, my brother should just join the band.
Yeah.
So it really was the Burroughs for a little bit. And then everybody asked when my brothers left, they were like, so you guys aren't the Burroughs anymore? I was like, well, it wasn't the Burroughs because my family was in it. Like Craig actually came up with the name. He just liked my last name. So yeah, but I don't know. We've always been able to keep it at 9. I mean, once you start to feel that power you have with 9 people, it's hard to like get rid of anybody.
The energy on stage is unreal.
Yeah,
I
thanks,
mean,
man.
just because you guys are awesome anyways, but yeah, and then you add that many people and you can't help but just feel it.
Yeah.
So
Thanks,
When
man.
you also like end up writing for it too, where it's like the 4-piece horn section thing is such a vibe, and like that's, you know, such a part of like that music's tradition to have like
That's cool.
that kind of lineup. And then with the rhythm section stuff, it's like, well, you really need keys and you really need lead guitar and you really, you know.
And are you guys all writing those like parts together, or is it usually one person, Johnny, maybe like writing a song, or how do you guys write the music together?
So traditionally, it's been, you know, I have created the original song concept, and I kind of say I come in with like the bones.
Gotcha.
And then, you know, we start jamming it as a band, and the meat starts to come on as far as like what the rhythm section is doing. The song starts to take shape.
Nice.
And then inside of that, a member of the horn section will begin to write horn parts around what's happening. And then it just like evolves from there. You know, it's been really great as we've evolved as a band. More people have become more involved with the songwriting. Mary wrote one of our singles last year, Zero Sum Game. She had the original concept, and then I worked it through with her. And then, of course, it went to, you know, the rest of the band. And then this new album that we're going to talk about, it's got lots of different writers on it, which is super cool.
Oh, cool. Anybody who's not in the band who's a writer?
No,
I was like-
I don't know. I'm just curious. You know, some people do that.
That's
Some
true.
people-
sure,
We have too many
yeah.
people, so we
Yeah.
we have a hard time getting everybody in there. So.
We got too many people, too many on board. Yeah, I totally get it. Zero Sum Game was actually on my list of songs that we were going to play, but you guys will have to go check that out because
Please do.
it's one of my faves. And
thank
it's
you.
cool that Mary is singing on that. Is she always singing on like everything you do? Like I know she does the background stuff, but like what's the relationship there as far as like how involved does she get? Was that her first one where she like sang the whole thing, or?
It's actually not. We did we did. There's another track where she's featured as the lead vocalist on our 2018 album that we put out. This track is called "Losing My," and that's So if you go listen to that, like that was probably the first one where she did lead, but she's always sung or like since pretty
We've
early
had
on.
some duet moments.
Yeah. And then on this record, really the development that's happened is like she's sung a lot more in the band, both in the studio and in the live show. And then so have many other members of the band. So like I sing a lot more background vocals now too, so we can get like a stack.
Nice, yeah.
Every now and then I sing some lead stuff too. And like Brian Claxton, who's our bassist, like sings, and then we'll get
I love
like
that. You
we'll
guys
get-
also, I noticed, don't you guys like swap roles too? Because I know Brian's also a great drummer, right?
Incredible. Like
Yeah.
literally world renowned, like played around the world as a jazz drummer.
Yeah.
And,
Like, you guys just
and
have
he's
this
awesome
whole
bassist.
family of musicians who just
It's so
like
true, man.
go around and
Yeah.
swap roles. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's so true.
I think that's
Wow.
been kind of like a really fun part of the band to me, especially like doing it over a decade, is that it's been this vehicle for all of us to flex like expanding our musicianship,
Yeah.
you know? So I came in as like primarily a jazz saxophonist and freelance musician. And then over the years, it's like, I flexed into like doing more background vocals and then doing lead vocals and then more songwriting and now like production on this. And I've kind of like been able to apply all of those skills on other projects. And I think that's the same with like everyone involved.
Yeah, I mean, Bree just put out an album last year that is all her own songwriting, all her own music. Or no, did it come out earlier this year?
No, it was last year.
Last year, thank God. Okay, good. I don't know anytime. Last year, anyways,
Who knows?
it's all her singer-songwriter stuff. It's really incredible, beautiful stuff. Her voice is beautiful, so she's featured a little bit on the new album as well. You know, and other people in the band also have projects that like are always going. It's just like there's so much music coming out of the 9 of us. It's like kind of crazy.
Jeez, that's pretty lucky, you guys.
We are pretty lucky.
Yeah.
Man, how do you all manage that? Are you all on iPhone? You all do iMessage? No, there better be nobody in the group who's off iPhone.
Oh,
You know?
there's
know,
some Android, but I know.
I'm a Pixel baby.
We do. We do have a shared. We've had a shared Google Calendar for years, which is, and I do most of our day-to-day management and like operations kind of stuff.
God bless her.
And so I've like, I have known 9 people's schedules and like what's going on in their lives for the past 9 years I've been involved. And it's just become kind of second nature at this point.
And I think the big thing too is like we have always tried to keep this idea of like being family and friends first. And especially going through the pandemic, like really what brought us back together is like, oh, we missed being with each other and playing music. And then kind of the music business stuff gets stacked on top of that. And I've always kept a consistent practice. Like Monday nights, we get together, we play music. Doesn't matter what's going on. Like if we can do it, like we're doing it Monday
That's cool,
nights,
man.
so.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to talk more about this record. I've noticed that you guys have put out a lot of singles through the years now.
Yeah.
And what's the deal with that? I mean, is it just because the, ROI on songs being, or records really not being what it used to be? Or are you guys just like, do you write in a way that's more single based where, it's like, oh, I have this one idea, but doesn't go with another, or
No, you should talk on that why we pivoted, because it was a like choice to pivot to singles.
Yeah, so it's funny, like ultimately I think we've always like just pursued the creative idea that feels like fun to make. That's been the primary driver. So early on in the band's history, like the band had put out an initial EP, kind of your earliest songs, and then the first like really big project we did together was this live record.
Before we did anything else.
Before we did anything else. It was in 2015, and kind of the motivation behind that was our live show like really had... It was like further along, I think, than our studio concept at the time.
100%.
And we also knew we could leverage it like on video and stuff to get more opportunities for the band.
Yep.
So I put that out, put out like a full live record, did a whole suite of videos that went with it, and got a lot of mileage out of that, honestly. But really, it was just like, that was the fun thing to do.
Yeah.
And then we did a couple singles in between there to kind of build our studio concept. And then we ended up doing a full-length studio album and kind of recorded in 2017, released in 2018. Again, I think the main motivation was just like, hey, now we feel ready for this.
Yeah,
and like, let's go try it.
Let's try it.
And that was like a really great experience creatively, I would say. And also like we had no idea like how to release it into the world at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, like we didn't like really know what we were doing. And also so many things have changed since then. So I think the reason we've put out a lot of singles kind of in the interim partly is driven always by our live show stuff. It's like, what songs are we writing together? And then which ones are kind of like hitting as we're doing live performance, and how do we want to capture that in the studio? It is certainly like easier to record, and it doesn't feel like as big of a lift.
Yeah.
I think also like we didn't feel like we had one cohesive concept for a while that felt like not like worthy, but it felt like worth doing an album. And then
Totally.
Until this record that's about to come out, it was kind of like actually originally like we were just going to put out an EP. So I guess to get into a little bit of that, like tail end of 2021, and this is coming out of the pandemic, we actually were able to play like quite a lot that summer as things kind of came back, and then it went,
Totally.
in that weird in between spot. And we had written a lot and had this collection of songs, and we're like, yeah, we've got a whole bunch of stuff we haven't recorded. Let's just like sit down and figure out what we want to do next. So me and Johnny and Mary, who we technically like co-own and co-manage the band together, sat down, brainstormed a few things. And then Mary said this one almost like offhand comment. We had this song called Honey, I'm a Star, title track of the record. It's on the album. It's kind of like this Princey, like live, super high energy funk thing. And it existed before the concept of this album at all. And Mary goes, what if Honey, I'm a Star were a person? Oh. And then I think Johnny's brain just went like the Zach Galifianakis like meme of like all this stuff. Like, yeah. And then suddenly, like, I don't know, 3 weeks later or whatever, Johnny's like, I've got 18 tracks of music.
18, I had like 35.
Yeah, 35
Wow.
songs or whatever. And like, here's what I'm thinking. Like, she's an alien. She comes to Earth, and like, it's this whole journey about how she learns how to be human. We're like, this is awesome. Like, and so, and then we kind of whittle it down from there. So we made a record with this. I mean, mostly because like we had a concept that felt deserving of doing it in an album format, and it was interesting to us. And as far as like singles, album art, like I don't know, we're always trying to figure that out as far as like what's the most effective strategy, and it's fun to try different things.
Well, and part of the strategy now, I think, is releasing singles before the album comes out, right?
Yep.
Totally.
Which you guys have done a couple, right?
Yeah.
Which we should listen to. We got one of them, Found My Groove.
That was the lead single.
I love that song, you guys.
Oh, thank
good
you.
Lord. That was fun. That one's super fun to me. So yeah, here it is, Found My Groove.
I'm so ready to say goodbye to all the negativity. I just say I do, 'cause I just woke up to the fact that I don't need to be like you.
I would love to hear about the video. I mean, because it seems like you guys are doing videos for, well, at least for every single I've seen so far.
Yeah, we're going to try to do as much video as possible.
Yeah.
As much as we can afford both money and time.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
So what's your video process like? We talked a little bit at breakfast about how you guys have a buddy who helps you, and you've done some of yourself too. Is it just kind of whatever comes to mind and who you can have help you out, or?
No, definitely not. Like, we've tried to make really strong creative videos for anything that we're putting out. And, the initial process is like, okay, how much money do we have to actually put into video content?
Yeah.
And so with Found My Groove, we knew it being the lead single that we really wanted to come out with something really, really striking and fun.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, a lot of the older videos, like I would just come up with like whatever like thing as I'm always, even as I'm writing songs, I'm always thinking visually. I'm thinking two ways. Like I'm thinking like, what does this look like when we're on a stage, and what moments are we pulling out? And then the second thing I'm thinking like is like, where does this put me? What world does this put me in? So as I'm writing a song, I'm like already thinking about like where that world is. What's interesting about Found My Groove is we wrote it like 3 years ago, and have been like working through it. So it was in a whole different world 3 years ago. But then once it entered this world of Honey, I'm a Star, it became something different. What was really fun is we were workshopping some different ideas, and Brie and I were chatting in the car, and she had like just an interesting take on like this sort of like open dystopian like space, and like it being very stark, and that got my brain rolling. So, I then, sat down and like conceptualized this whole idea of like what it could be. And that's what I always do. I sit down and I like pull from, I'm pulling from like THX 1138, like George Lucas's first movie. And Cannonball Run, and like all these old 1970s like dystopian movies.
Very cool.
And like putting together visuals of what we could do. And then it's a lot like songwriting. I'll bring those ideas to the band, and we'll have hopefully some sessions where we can kind of like brainstorm other ideas.
That's cool.
Oh, and I was going to say, so a lot of times like we start with this big picture vision of like, what's the story? What's the aesthetic? So much of it is like aesthetically driven. Johnny does a really great job of putting essentially like mood boards, style guides together, pulling from all these things. And then ultimately what drives, I think, a lot of the final creative choices is what physical space do we have access to?
Totally.
So in this case, we ideally need just a big blank space.
Just a big giant room.
That also someone is willing to give us essentially for free.
Yeah.
And so, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but us being in Greeley, sometimes that's an advantage in the way the community supports us. So I reached out. I was reaching out, sourcing a location.
Briana Harris making stuff happen.
And we have some contacts at the city, and there's this big event center that actually is used for this event called the Greeley Stampede every summer. And it has a combination of like, there's rodeo grounds and festival grounds outside, but there's a couple of like really large buildings. So there's one huge warehouse, essentially, this event center that's got like concrete floor, big ceilings. It literally is like a big blank space that's the size of an airplane hangar.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
So I contacted someone at the city. I was like, hey, trying to shoot this music video. We have a date picked out in February. Hopefully you're not that busy. Like, is there any chance you could give us like one of your spaces on this campus? And they're like, oh yeah, we can just give you the whole event center. Like you guys can just use it for for like 10 hours on a Saturday.
Wow.
And yeah, it's like it'll be good promotion. So it's like incredible. So grateful.
So thank you so much.
And that ended up like driving a lot of the final choices we made. So, and that's kind of been the case with like every video project I feel like we've made. We come in with a concept, and sometimes we have ideal locations where it could work, and then once we're able to kind of lock something in.
That's super cool.
That drives.
It's cool that you guys like
Yeah.
as a band have a team of people helping you, like that you can go and find a place, and you're putting together these big treatments. That's like already more than what I do for myself. Because like, I'm like, dang,
We
you're
kinda
putting
have
together
to-
like mood boards and shit.
Well,
like,
here's the thing, man. It's like when you're working creatively with 9 other people,
Yeah.
it's like I've learned over the years that I need to come at the forefront with a vision that makes sense that I can get other people to like buy into and make it theirs.
Yep.
So doing that, it's like same thing with songwriting, same thing with anything we're doing. If I think through all those details, I used to think it was constraining on the people that I was creating with. Is like, oh, I'm coming up with all the ideas and they have no room to create. But I realized it's like, oh, if I build the world, then they get to play in the world.
Yeah.
So whether that's musically or visually, it's like if I build the world, then they get to play in that world, and that's where like everybody gets to input what they're doing. And I found that like people feel much more boosted creatively when they find a world that they get to create in.
that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So that's
That's really
definitely
cool.
the case with that video. I mean, and really like a lot of stuff we've done, but we had come up with this whole aesthetic and then had location and then, you know, kind of like styled the band in different outfit. But then everyone like brought their own ideas to it. Like some of the little moments that happen and motions that people do or characters that they're playing are ideas that came from individuals there.
And then we've worked with a lot of our, I want to throw a plug to him.
Yeah, sure.
We work with a cinematographer in Greeley called Joe Bryan, and he's shot the last 4 or 5 music videos we've done, and we just love working with him. He does great work. So we love any time that we have a budget to hire him because his stuff just looks really, really great. So knowing that we have someone like that in our corner also is just like really amazing and allows us.
Totally.
And then to be honest, and then I do like 1,000 hours of editing all by myself.
Dude, yeah, nice. What do you edit in?
I have Premiere.
Oh, you're one of those.
Yeah, what do you edit in?
I'm a Final Cut guy.
Final
but
Cut. I got Premiere. I stumbled into editing, so the guy I
Nice.
learned from, he had Premiere,
Yeah.
and so he gave it to me to use for free, and I'm like, cool, this is what I know. And
Nice.
I'm a junk editor, man. If you looked at like
Oh,
the
no,
way it
that's
is
not
inside
true.
of my thing, you would be like, what is this chaos? I like research how to do things, and I'm like, I'm not doing any of this right, but it's working, so whatever.
that's how we all learn. I
Yeah.
started learning on like a don't come after me, but a cracked version of Premiere.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Nice.
And,
Adobe's like knocking on your door.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, and then eventually, you start investing into one system,
Yeah.
and then
Totally.
now I'm locked into Final Cut. But a lot of people are switching over to DaVinci. So
Ooh.
if you guys have gotten into that, now who knows?
I don't know anything.
We play music, right? We,
Yeah,
don't, we
yeah.
don't edit videos.
Yeah.
We play music, so let's
Listeners,
make all that
you
stuff.
want to know all about like
That's cool.
videos.
You do the editing though, because you guys shot the last one yourselves, right? The last video.
Yeah,
you
the
did.
one that just came out for Harder to Believe, we actually just, it's like kind of an ebb and flow, even with putting out a record where our first music video, we were able to take extra time. And this second one, it's like we have, running a business and trying
Yeah.
to make music, and especially putting an album out that we're really excited about and want to push ourselves to the next level. It's like the amount of time you have for some of the creative stuff is not as high.
Yeah.
So we literally, it was Bree's idea. She's like, we just need to get everybody in front of a camera and just shoot something. I was like, great.
Yeah.
Everybody show up on
Fun,
Monday.
yeah.
Like we're gonna like set up a camera and everybody's gonna lip sync, and then we're gonna do a bunch of weird backwards stuff, and then I'm just gonna get weird in the editing room. So
Wow, cool.
it's like it costs us $50 and then like 1,000 hours of editing. But
Yeah.
again, it's like as long as you let your creativity run, like you're gonna come up with something.
Yeah, we've made a whole host of like over the years. I mean, really high production stuff with like, teams and multiple camera and then stuff on like one camera. And like, I think that's actually kind of the fun of it is how can you make something that has clarity of vision within whatever limitations you're working in.
Totally.
Well, I think
So-
what's cool is for your fans too. Is as your fans get to see little bits of pieces of you and get to like just know you personally through
Yeah.
other ways that you create art when you do your own videos. I think it's like shows your personality, and your fans probably
Yeah.
enjoy that.
That's
So,
the way I want to connect. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, this is Harder to Believe.
I can't believe that this has happened again. Here I am, watching every day just run together, sing it dumb, dumb, time moves slow, twiddling my thumbs and humming the same tune. Let me steamroll you with some positive information. I'm a blackball you from the stations that be telling you lies, telling you lies.
What were you you saying about the river earlier? That the river, you have to lead.
Yeah, Lee, well, we were talking about the river. We were talking about like doing interviews and you as an interviewer, but we were also talking about like fronting a band. And I said, it's like, well, when you're fronting the band, it's your job to make sure like the show flows like a river and everything moves to the next thing and it feels clean and there's momentum. But then there's also those like bends where it slows down and then it picks up.
I know.
It should be like a river and not like a lake where everybody's just splashing around randomly.
Yeah. Do you guys feel like this record right now is like the river's flowing?
Oh.
Or have you gotten to an end point? Are you guys already thinking ahead? What's next?
I'll talk about this a little bit.
Yeah.
Man, well, so we've been working on this all in all, I mean, like a year and a half now from the conception of it to release.
Since the conception to release, yeah.
And
Oh my
before
gosh.
that, like some of these songs existed in different formats. And so, you know, we've been like, as you know, being a musician and putting out projects, we've been like in the thick of it, especially like this spring, doing the release cycle. And so I think we're in an exciting moment where like, we've really thought long and hard about this and invested a lot of time, but so much of it's like hidden or behind the scenes. And now people are actually getting to like interact and respond to it, which is the fun part of it and like why we make music. But
Totally.
I think an artist struggle all the time, especially in this like DIY musician band, like modern era where you often do so much of that work yourself, is like remembering that your audience is experiencing it for the first time, even if you've been
Like you're done with
sitting
it.
sitting with it for a long time, or if you've like moved on to another creative idea, and just staying committed to being like, no, I gotta like view this through the lens of like the magic of someone coming to this and like stay in it and we are really excited about the project. Like
so
I cannot
excited.
wait for people to.
Well, what's cool too
Yeah.
is not only like once you release it, is it new to some people, but a year or two later, it could still be new to some people.
Totally.
And that's we were having a conversation in the car driving here from Greeley. Like, you know, what are our plans to continue this thing that we love? Because we created an album that we are incredibly proud of. That we worked really, really hard. Took a lot of time to make sure that it fulfills what we wanted to do, which is create a concept, create a story, but also create engaging songs that take you from one to the next. And so there's so much we did to build this whole beautiful organism that works together. We were talking on the way down. It's like, right now, you know, to be honest, we're dog tired, just like slogging through all the stuff you have to do in order to get your work out there and also promote it. But we're talking about like, you know, how do we, you know, look at this release as like, you know, it comes out June 2nd, but that's not the end. That's like the beginning of what we're doing for releasing this album. And what's cool about, you know, even what you said, it's like someone could discover it in a year or two. And what's frustrating but also cool is like we can continue to create stuff for this album, and then we could create new stuff inside of that. And like, nobody gives a rip. Like in the sense of like, nobody's going to care if we released a new single next winter that's not from this album and then put another thing out from this album. It's like, there's kind of no rules. So like, it's exciting. Again, Bree said our mantra too is like, what's exciting to us to create. And so that's always what does drive us. And then, you know, a lot of times you get hit with a baseball bat in the face of like, well, how do you make money now off of that?
or even like before you're making, you know, how do you get it in front of people?
Totally.
Like, so we've talked a lot about like I don't think we've mentioned explicitly yet that we made this as like a concept album, like really meant to be listened to from start to finish, like has a narrative through line, even the way the production is done and the songs are edited, the back half of it is like continuous essentially. So it's like, well, that's how we intentionally put it together. We hope people sit down and listen to it that way, but we're also realists enough to understand that like in the modern internet and streaming era, it's like people are going to encounter it however, like one song at a time or single or whatever. So we want to play with that too, where it's like ultimately we tried to put, you know, a bunch of great songs on the record. And that's something we talked about too when we were putting together the concept. It's like, this needs to be a concept. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's got to be good songs, and the songs have to stand on their own. And so like, how can we continue to play with that idea, understanding that people might encounter just like one of these songs at a time, and maybe that's the thing that brings them in. So
what's the concept is Honey, I'm a Star.
Honey, I'm a Star. So, Honey, I'm a Star.
Yeah, give it to me.
So, she is a scientist that lives in a completely different galaxy. And she lives in a society that is the perfect utopian society. They've figured out how to live perfectly. If you can, none of us can imagine what that is, but they figured it out. Everything works together exactly as it should. Every T is crossed, every I is dotted, everything is perfect. And she's a scientist who observes other civilizations, other organisms throughout the different galaxies and dimensions. So she has really become fond of Earth because she's observed it for a long time, and she just can't understand why we can't get it right and why we seem to make the same mistakes no matter what our technological breakthrough is, no matter what happens in our society. Like, we make the same mistakes over and over.
Yeah.
So she gets it in her head that she's going to come to Earth and she's going to do it right, as almost as like a proving to herself that, hey, this can be done right. We figured it out in our society. I'm coming to Earth and I'm going to show you all that this can be done right. So it's
I like where this is going already.
It's an experiment for her. So she says, I'm going to go to Earth. I'm going to live humanity perfect. I know how to do it right.
Yeah.
And as we all know, that is incredibly hard. And so the whole album plays out as she begins to come face to face with what it means to be human, what it means to live in this messy place, and ultimately, you know, what we believe and what our message is as a band of how you keep going every day here on Earth.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like it's been so interesting. Like I said, we've been working on this for a long time, and some of the songs existed kind of outside of this and were brought into this universe, and then other ones we sort of wrote to the concept. And I have one of the most enjoyable parts of this process to me, having really been in the thick of it for the past year and a half, has been how I personally am like coming back to the songs and how they resonate in my own life and experiences.
Oh, yeah.
Because like it's not, I think people have this concept of our band, if they know anything about it, it's like, oh, it's like upbeat, high energy, positive vibes,
Yep.
which it totally is. And this is kind of our most like weighty, conflicted, like, you know, emotionally up and down project we've maybe ever put out. But I think that's very reflective of like our personal experiences through the past, especially like
Well, you guys have just
4 or 5
matured as a
years.
band too, and just
Yeah.
as people, and
It's so much a part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say that I wanted the album to end super dark.
Oh, yeah.
When I first was conceptualizing it and I brought it to Brie and Mary, I had some dark ideas, and they're like, I don't think we could do that, which actually caused me to go back and write the song that ended up being the end of our album. And you know, like a song like Harder to Believe is really about like the daily grind that just breaks you down. Like, you don't think it does, like, but once the day becomes the same, it doesn't matter like what you're doing, it doesn't matter what your job it doesn't matter what your life is. If life becomes monotonous, eventually it just starts to break you down, and how you're just like can't get over that. And a lot of it's been fun writing in a concept is thinking about, you know, someone who's never experienced that before having to deal with it for the first time. So even, you know, it's a classic coming of age tale. So like, you know, for us growing up and having new experiences that you think you understood, you know, when you were younger, and now you're looking at it through a new lens, it's as if you were experiencing it for the first time. And one of my favorite tracks on the album is called Alone. And when I first conceptualized that idea, I thought about, what if you were a person who has never experienced the feeling of being alone, and like how weird and foreign, and you wouldn't even understand why, because what's weird about feeling alone in humanity is like we are surrounded constantly by people. I mean, I've heard so many people talk about this. I'm sure everybody has. It's like, I'm always around people, I'm with people, like but why do I feel so alone?
Yeah.
Like, why do I feel alone in this?
Yeah.
And like, we're just searching for connection. So I found it so interesting to think about, like, what if you've never experienced that? And you're like, you are and she's a rational, scientific person who can explain everything. And this is like really the first dark moment of the album where she goes, I can explain everything I've been through, but I don't understand why I feel alone, even though I'm around people. So
This is so
like,
profound.
coming,
I love
so
it.
I've been waiting to talk about all
This
this
is
stuff.
so
Like, we've
cool.
been waiting to talk
Yeah.
about like what we thought about and how we like came to this, and like all
Yeah.
our different journeys. So
Well, and
Wow.
if you feel comfortable talking about
Go,
this,
please.
like, so Johnny and his wife had their first kid, like right in the process of writing this album, and then like Brian and Mary have had their son this year, and I think there's certainly an element about like viewing like to parenthood specifically, or just like, with like a young human
Totally.
walking through a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of parallels about that, and like viewing something through the eyes of like a child or like someone new to Earth.
Yeah.
So like, I think that's like a really special part of the story too. That's kind of at the heart of it.
Definitely.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself writing because of your kid now too?
Oh yeah, I mean, I can tell this story now. I don't know if we're gonna play this song yet, but this is the best.
Yeah.
So the title track, "Honey, I'm a Star."
Yeah, we'll get there. By the way, we are going to play the song.
Yeah. I can save this story too if we can want to edit it. We can change
No,
it.
we're getting up to it. So this is
Okay.
perfect.
So
Yeah.
this is one of my favorite stories. So the title track, "Honey, I'm a Star," that originally started as a song that I just randomly started singing to my daughter when she was only a few weeks old. So I was in this, sleepy state where, we're not sleeping pretty much any night. My wife and I are taking shifts and holding our new baby daughter as she's like, just first breathing. And my wife had just gotten done with her shift, and she hands me my baby daughter. She's like, "All right, you're going to go hang out with your dad." And I picked her up, and I was just like, "Oh, yes, it's time to hang out with your dad. Oh, it's time to hang out with your dad. Hang out with your dad. Hang out with your dad. Hang out with your dad." And I like immediately was like, "Oh my God, that's a hit." So that night, like this was my routine at night. I would like watch a kung fu movie while I held her, and then I would go into my room and I'd put on my headphones, and I'm holding my baby daughter in my left hand, and I got my MIDI keyboard right here, and I'm plotting out this whole song, and eventually that became "Turn out the lights and I'll shine in the dark, 'cause honey, I'm a star. Honey, I'm a star. Honey, I'm a star. Honey, I'm a star. Honey, I'm a star." So it evolved into that. And that, I mean, this whole album is full of serendipitous moments, but that one moment of like the connection I had with my daughter made this melody. I wrote this song. It actually was "Baby, I'm a Star." Then Brian was like, "That's already a Prince song, so name it "Honey, I'm a Star." And then Mary heard "Honey, I'm a Star," and she's like, "Well, that should be the character." And then we find ourselves with this whole concept, and it's just like the dominoes.
Amazing.
Like, I get goosebumps for myself, man. I hope people listen and love it.
I feel the goosebumps right here. Like when you guys started getting into it together, I was like, wow.
And your daughter knows the record.
She knows it backwards and forwards. She's only 2.5, but because we recorded it last spring.
Yeah.
And then we ended up, because of some like random circumstances, doing like the majority of the mixing in our own home studios. And so she's listened to each song over, because I'm stay-at-home dad most days. So like I'm in the car with her just like jamming these songs over and over, and she knows every song. Like you could play her the very beginning of one song for like half a second, and she'll start singing it the rest of the song.
Well, she should. I was going to say earlier, she's the scientist.
She
right?
is. She is. She's
I know.
And the surprise, she might be the scientist at the very, very end of the record.
Yeah,
so make sure you listen to the whole thing.
All
she might
right.
make an appearance.
Yeah.
Guys, I can't wait for the record to come out. This is so awesome. Oh my gosh. Well, we're going to get a faidr and Pivot Points exclusive here.
Yeah.
And we'll listen to your new song, "Honey, I'm a Star." And I don't think we could say much more about it, but I'm excited to hear it. Here we go.
Yeah.
"Honey, I'm a Star."
Simply cannot describe all the beauty that I see inside. It's luminous.
You guys got some great stories about this record.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for letting us tell them. I mean,
Yeah, I'm like really excited to I was already excited to hear it, but now sitting down with you guys now, I'm like, oh my God, I got to hear this. So
that's the point. Yeah.
That's the plan. We're trying to get the story out, man.
So I hope that everyone else feels the same way when they listen
Thank
to
you
this.
so much.
And,
Yeah. Our big release party for this album is June 9th at Meow Wolf in Denver.
Oh, at Meow Wolf.
Yeah.
Nice.
A super psychedelic, spacey venue to match this weird and wild record.
Honestly, that is perfect.
Yeah,
So-
it's perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, that'll be fun. Well, that's all we got, folks. Thanks so much for listening to Pivot Points. You can listen to the Pivot Points Music Cast and more on the faidr app. My name's Seth Beamer, and I'll talk to you soon.